Welcome, thank you for tuning in. My name's Nico. I go by COINTrick and COINTrickTwitch online. And tonight, there's something that I've been wanting to do, or test out at least. Reviewing and reacting. This is Barchemistry's bartending crash course. I guess we're just gonna jump in. He's basically getting at this idea that society tells you that you need to do one thing and you spend your whole life seemingly working toward what other people tell you that is. Until you realize that you're not happy and you're already so far in the muck that you don't know how to get out. There are a lot of things that I think you should have a higher education to pursue, like being a doctor and stuff like that. Some people in chat will probably be like, it used to be that you didn't have to go to school to be a doctor. And it's like, yeah, you could do that when you could make cocaine prescriptions and tell people they had ghosts in their blood. You didn't need to go to school for that. I'm curious to see how he rings this in though.
How hard you work and how good you are at your job does directly affect your paycheck.
When you're good at your job, you'll work harder to improve your tips. I know that's how my mind works. I also know from having researched this that that's actually not how tips work, hardly ever at all. In large part, it's less about how hard you work and more about how much product you can sell. I'm thinking about becoming a bartender in college because of your videos. Oh, sick, yeah. Well, Wu-Talk's talking about this now, about how you have a lot of free time. If you are going to college, it's a great job to sort of pick up in your free time, because a lot of college bars will be able to work with a schedule where you can really only come in for maybe 2 or 3 nights a week. And they'll want you there for the busy nights, which will be the nights that you make the most money anyway. You trying to wiggle? Wiggly squiggle bear. Do you have any tips that you should know before it's set in stone? You mean before you become a bartender? One of my first tips would be don't let your job become your identity. You can identify as a bartender and stuff like that. It doesn't need to be your whole personality.
And the difference between going out and being the bartender is that everyone wants to be friends with the bartender. You are directly responsible for how much liquor you're pouring in there. You'd be shocked at the type of things people are willing to do to get on your good side. So that just means that you have an opportunity to talk to every person in that bar, and they have a reason to try to impress you.
Once you're the bartender, you get treated differently, and that was more conducive for me. That was more the style of service that I was used to and what I had become good at. We definitely, you'll have guests who are full of themselves and are super entitled, who will not try and be your friend, and they'll think that because they have the money, if they put the money in, then the drinks come out like a vending machine. Which is more, that's how it happens, but you're gonna have a better time when you're better to your bartenders.
While I was scrolling through the comments and seeing the typical stuff about how can I become a bartender, I want to learn to bartend, can you teach me how to bartend? I realized that they weren't even seeing the true benefits of what bartending could bring them. They were focused on the surface level attractions of this job. The fast money, the swag, the girls, the guys, the pseudo rock star lifestyle, as I like to call it. And just as I've seen people succeed
That's
with
definitely
this,
a thing.
the third lesson will focus on becoming the most successful bartender you can be. I'm gonna share with you my social hacks and conversational tips that I teach to all of my bartenders to make sure that they can command every conversation and become more likable, so that you can increase tips and ultimately your bank account and increase your net worth.
One of the questions that I get asked a lot is how do you get into bartending, or can you become a bartender if you're an introvert or if you have social anxiety? I am an introvert though. I'm incredibly shy. I will choose staying home and being alone to recharge rather than going out and hanging out with my friends, going out drinking. Yes, you can definitely be a very good, very successful bartender. You just have to you have to embrace that, own it. Don't fake being an extrovert behind the bar, because it will come off as fake. Let's hop into lesson 2. I don't want anyone reading ahead.
The search term in bartending is it's how to
become a bartender
with no experience.
Yeah. At my bar, we managed to train up from scratch someone who had no experience as a bartender very quickly. We've actually gone kind of 95% of the way back to how things were pre-COVID. So we're dealing with standing room and stuff a little bit now, and he's getting a little bit stressed out, but he's crushing it. He's doing phenomenal. This is probably the best time to start as a bartender without experience. That being said, and I think he's going to cover this, you should have some experience in the service industry in general, not just getting thrown behind the bar.
I got lucky and I was hired by the very first place I interviewed at. But there's a catch. They didn't hire me as a bartender. While they loved me in the interview, I had zero experience. And at an upscale place that focused heavily on cocktails, they couldn't take that risk. But because I was so passionate and adamant about becoming a bartender, they told me that within 6 months, I would have the chance to move from server to bartender.
Two things that you need to be wary of when you go to an interview like this. They will hire you where they need the work, and they'll tell you anything that they think you need to hear to get you on the floor and to get you working on that stuff. Be very wary of people who make you promises. When they tell you, like in Wu-Tang's situation, when they tell you, yeah, in 6 months, we'll move you over to bartending. You don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. They might fire you before then. They might hire another bartender who does have experience, and they may not have room for you behind the bar. They may not have the time or resources to train you behind the bar. Take all that stuff with a grain of salt.
Now that manager who made that promise to me got fired pretty much immediately. And the new manager who replaced him had no intention of keeping his promise to me. But because I worked there, I just waited and made sure that I was ready. So one fateful day, our head bartender was fired. And because he was our best bartender and he had 5 dinner shifts that he was working, that's a big hole in our schedule that is now stressful for our managers to have to fill. So everyone knew about it, including me. And I went immediately to the GM and I said, look, you've been hiring all these bartenders. It has never worked out. I know all these signature cocktails. I know the entire food menu, and if you give me 2 weeks, I'll ace any test that you want on classic cocktails. So because I showed him the value there was in using me instead of looking for another bartender, he accepted my proposition. And I spent the next 2 weeks studying literally everything I could find about bartending. So let's go over that process. I get my foot in the door by accepting another front of the house position. Front of the house meaning service, like barback, busser, or waiter. I made it.
I think the reason, and I guess I pointed this out too early, the reason that he didn't lead with this is because we know this is not what people want to hear when they're like, how do I get started as a bartender with zero experience? It's like, yeah, it's possible, you can do it, but you have to work in, you should work in the restaurant first. The thing that he's done that is really smart is once there was that glaring opening, he rushed to be the guy to fill that, and obviously like proved his worth very, very quickly.
Bartending is not the hardest thing in the world to learn. It's hard to be really good, because let's face it, how many great bartenders
deceptively simple.
Walk into the store with your resume and ask to speak to a manager.
Key emphasis on this: when you're applying at a bar for any position, show up and hand them your application. I was at a bar recently and they're having trouble staffing bartenders. Apparently they had 25 people apply online. Only 2 people showed up in person. Guess which one of them got hired? And also, like, stay there. Don't just like hand in your thing and then be like, okay, cool. All right, bye. Like, when you hand your application to somebody or you hand someone your resume, ask them about the bar. Ask them, like, what do they sell the most of? Is it more of like a neighborhood bar, or is it more like novel? Do they have a bunch of first comers, or is it mostly regulars? Like, seem interested. And they will probably also ask you questions about yourself. And then you can sort of like use that as an entry interview. And they'll get a better idea of who you are, and they'll probably call you back more based off of that than your application or your resume.
Remember people's names. It sounds so easy that it can't be that powerful, but I promise you it is studied and proven.
This is true. If you remember someone's name, if you repeat it back to them, as simple and as dumb as this sounds, they will trust you more, they will like you more, in my experience. The trick, though, is not forgetting their name after they leave, which has definitely happened to me. I've had people who, like, they'll show up and, like, I'll have, like, a really good chat with them, and then they'll come back in 2 weeks later and they're like, oh, what's up, man? And I'm like, hey, what's up? Welcome, dude. Have you been here before? And I'm like, remember names, but also don't forget names.
Everyone wants to talk about themselves, but rarely get the chance to do so. This is why people call bartenders therapists, because the good bartenders understand this. They make sure they play that role for people. They engage in great conversation, and they're rewarded because of it.
I will say this is true. Bartenders can be great bartenders are good listeners. And I'm an all right listener. I do 9 times out of 10, I will forget everything that we've talked about as soon as you leave, which is one of the weaknesses that I should work on as a bartender for sure. But I mean, yeah, it definitely helps you can even get good at small talk, but always lead something with a question.
I really hope I've brought you value in these past few days. Thank you for trusting me enough to go on this journey with me. If you're really looking to level up your life and have me guide you through it, this class is that path. So don't slack these next 7 days or you might miss it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Let me know if you guys want to see me attending these classes once a month, and then because if you guys want to see it, then I wouldn't mind live streaming it. I've definitely disagreed with just a few things over the course of this. But if you're looking for a course that will teach you how to get hired, how to get started, and also how to get the most out of your experience from behind the bar, I can't recommend this enough. Like, it's free. All of the videos are really short. Like, he doesn't give you a bunch of work that you need to do on your own. And all of his arguments, like everything he says in the videos checks out. There are some things that like maybe needed a little bit of extra detail, and he doesn't cite a few things, but overall, yes, I would recommend this 10 times out of 10.